Hey, everybody, I'm going to start reading from pages 164. Joseph, just outside Havana Harbor, 1939, 18 days from home. Joseph tried to hang on to the chair, but his father was still strong enough to yank it out of his hands. Papa stacked it on the tower of furniture he'd already piled up against the door. "We can't let them back in," Papa cried. "They'll come for us again and take us away." It had taken Joseph and his mother a night and a day to put their cabin back together after Otto Scheindick and his goons had tore up the place. But in the span of 15 minutes, his father had undone it all again, snatching up anything that wasn't nailed down and stacking it against the door. Ruthie crouched in the corner, crying and hugging Bitsy. Joseph's mother had sewed and stuffed the stuffed bunny back together first thing before Ruthie had seen it headless. "Aaron, Aaron," Joseph's mother now said, "you have to calm down. You're scaring your daughter." He was scaring Joseph, too. Joseph stared at his father. This skeleton, this crazed ghost, this wasn't his father. The Nazis had taken his father away and replaced him with a madman. "You don't understand," Joseph's father said. "You can't know what they did to people, what they'll do to us." Papa threw an open suitcase on the pile, spilling clothes all over the room. When he put everything he could on the barricade, he crawled under the desk at the back of the room like a child playing hide and seek. Mama looked frightened as she tried to figure out what to do. "Ruthie," she said at last, "put your swimsuit on and go to the pool." "I don't want to go swimming," Ruthie said, still crying in the corner. "Do as I say," Mama said. Ruthie pulled herself away from the wall and picked through the clothes on the floor for her swimsuit. "Joseph," Mama said, low enough for him to hear her, "I'm going to go to the ship's doctor for a sleeping draught for your father, something to calm him down. I'll take Ruthie to the pool, but I need you to stay here and watch your father." Papa was still curled into a ball under the desk, rocking and muttering to himself. The idea of being here alone with him filled Joseph with dread. "But if the doctor knows he's unwell, they might not let us into Cuba," Joseph whispered, desperate to find some reason to keep his mother with him. "I'll tell the doctor I'm anxious and I haven't been sleeping," Mama said. "I'll tell him the draught is for me." Joseph's mother helped Ruthie finish putting on her swimsuit, and together they were able to pull the haphazard pile of furniture far enough away from the door to open it. Joseph's father, who had been set on building the barricade just minutes before, was so lost in his own mind he didn't even notice. Joseph didn't know what to do with himself, so he started to put the room back together. Papa stayed quiet and still under the desk. Joseph hoped he'd gone to sleep. Mama came back within minutes, and Joseph felt an immense sense of relief until he saw the dull, panicked look Mama wore, and she got her scarf scared all over again. She stumbled as she entered the cabin like she couldn't remember how to walk, and Joseph hurried to help her to one of the beds. "Mama, what is it? What's wrong?" Joseph asked. I told the sleeping draught was for me," she said, her words slow. "And he made me take it right there." "You drank it?" Joseph said. His mother's eyelids fluttered. "I had to," he said. After I told him. Couldn't let him know Aaron was really the one who..." Mama's eyelids closed and she swayed. Joseph panicked. She couldn't go to sleep. Not now. Who was supposed to take care of his father? He couldn't do it alone. "Mama, don't go to sleep." Her eyes jerked open again, but they lost their focus. "Your sister," she said. "Don't forget. Your sister. She's at the pool." Her eyes flickered closed again, and she rolled back into bed. "No, no, 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 no," Joseph said. He tried patting his mother on the cheeks to wake her up, but she was out cold. Joseph got up and paced the room, trying to think. With his mother asleep, he had to watch his father every second. Joseph glanced at him under the desk. Papa was quiet now, but the slightest thing could set him off. Joseph couldn't go for help anyway. If anyone knew his father was unwell, he'd be barred from entering Cuba. But Joseph also had to get Ruthie at some point, and he made sure he got dinner and was put to bed. Suddenly, Joseph was the man of the family, the only adult in the room, whether he wanted to be or not. "Have you ever seen a man drown?" Papa asked in a whisper, and Joseph jumped. Joseph wasn't sure if Papa was talking to him or just talking, but he was afraid to answer, afraid to break the quiet spell his father was under. His father kept talking. After the evening roll call, they would choose someone to drown, one every night. They would tie his ankles together and his hands behind his back and tie a gag around his mouth, and then they would hang him upside down with his head in a barrel, like a fish, like a big fish on the pier, hanging upside down by its tail. Then they would fill the barrel with water, slowly, so they could enjoy the panic, so they could laugh. And when the water would rise high enough to cover his nose, and he would breathe in water because there was nothing else he could do, he would breathe in water like a fish, only he wasn't a fish. He was a man. He would thrash around and breathe underwater until he drowned upside down. Joseph's breathing stilled. He caught himself hugging Ruthie's stuffed bunny tight. Every night they did it, and we all had to stand and watch, his father whispered. We had to stand and watch. We couldn't say a word. We couldn't move a muscle, or we would be next. Tears rolled down Joseph's cheeks. He thought about how he'd treated his father at the Cuban doctor's examination, how he'd made his father believe he was back in that place where he'd been seen so many awful things. I can't go back there, his father whispered. I can't go back. His father closed his eyes and put his head between his knees, and soon he was asleep. Joseph sat with his sleeping parents until the cabin started to get dark and he couldn't put off finding Ruthie any longer. He would just have to be as quick as he could. Joseph left the cabin and found his sister splashing around in the pool with the other kids. Joseph asked the steward to bring their dinners to their cabin tonight, and as he led Ruthie back, he congratulated himself on surviving his first day as an adult, until he opened the door and his father was gone. Joseph dropped Ruthie's hand and got down on his hands and knees and searched under the beds, but his father wasn't there. He wasn't in the cabin at all. No, no, Joseph cried. He shook his mother, begged her to wake up, but the sleeping draught was too powerful. Joseph spun in the room, trying to figure out what to do. He snatched up Bitsy and put the little stuffed bunny in Ruthie's arms. Stay here, he told Ruthie. Stay here with Mama. And don't leave the cabin. Understand? I have to go find Papa. Joseph ran out the door and into the passageway. But where to now? Where would his father go? Papa hadn't left the cabin the whole trip, and now he had decided to leave? Joseph heard a commotion, and he sprinted up the stairs to A deck. Up ahead, a man was helping a woman to her feet, and both of them were looking angrily over their shoulders, the direction Papa must have run. And that's when Joseph remembered his father had left the cabin before to watch them bury Professor Wheeler at sea. Somewhere up ahead, a woman screamed, and Joseph took off at a run. He felt as though he was outside himself, like he exited his own skin, and watched himself slam into the rail and look over the side. Someone yelled, "Man overboard!" and the ship's siren shrieked. Joseph's father had jumped into the sea. Isabel, somewhere on the Caribbean Sea, 1994, 3 days from home. Isabel woke to a warm orange glow on the horizon and a silver sea stretching out before them like a mirror. It was as though the storm had been some kind of feverish nightmare. Senor Castillo woke from his nightmare too, parched like a man who'd been lost in the desert. He drank almost half of one of the few gallons of water they had left in one long chug, then laid back against the side of the boat. Isabel worried about her mother. For Mammy, the nightmare was just beginning. The illness she'd felt as the storm had gotten worse in the night, and now she had a fever hotter than the rising sun. Lito dipped a scrap of his shirt into the cool seawater and draped it across his daughter's forehead to cool her, but without the aspirin from the lost medical box, there was no way to bring the fever down. The baby, Mamie moaned, holding her stomach. The baby will be fine, Lito told her. A good, strong, healthy baby boy. Lito and Senora Castillo took care of Isabel's mother. Poppy and Luis got the engine started and bathed it with water to keep it cool. Amara, at the rudder, steered them north now that the sun was in the sky. Everybody had a job, it seemed, except Isabel and Ivan. Isabel bumped shoulders and stepped on toes as she wobbled her way over to Ivan in the prow of the boat. She sat down beside him with a huff. I feel useless, she told Ivan. I know, he said. Me too. They sat for a while in silence before Ivan said, "Do you think we'll have to do algebra in our new American school?" Isabel laughed. "Yes." "Will they have political rallies every day at school in the U.S.? Will we have to work in the fields all afternoon?" His eyes went wide. "Do you think we'll have to carry guns to protect us from all the shootings?" "I don't know," Isabel told him. Their teachers told them all the time how homeless people starved in the streets of the U.S., and how people who couldn't afford to pay for doctors got sick and died, and how thousands of people were killed by guns every year. As happy as she had been to go to El Norte, Isabel suddenly worried that it wouldn't be as magical a place as everyone in the boat believed. "No matter what, I'm glad you came with us," Ivan said. "Now we can live next door to each other forever." Isabel blushed and looked at her feet. She liked that thought too. Castro's face was even more submerged now, which meant they were taking on water. Between the tanker and the storm, the little boat had suffered a pounding, and it had never been very seaworthy to begin with. Senor Castillo had only expected the boat to be on water for a day, 2 at the most. How much longer would it take for them to get to Florida? And where exactly were they? "Hey, is that land?" Ivan asked. He pointed over the side of the boat. Isabel and the others scrambled so quickly to see that the boat tipped dangerously in the water. Yes, yes, Isabel could see it, a long, thin, dark green line along the blue horizon. Land. "Is it Florida?" Ivan asked. "It's on the wrong side of the boat to be the U.S., Luis said, looking back at the sun, "unless we got blown into the Gulf of Mexico overnight." "Whatever it is, I'm steering for it," Amara told them. Everyone watched in silence as the green line turned into hills and trees, and the water got clearer and shallower. Isabel held her breath. She had never been so excited in her entire life. Was it really the United States? Had they made it? Amara brought them close to shore, and then turned and ran south along it. Isabel searched the shore. There! She pointed to a red and yellow beach umbrellas and chairs underneath them, and in the beach chairs were white people. A woman in a bikini lifted her black sunglasses and pointed at them, and the man with her sat up and stared. As the boat rounded the beach, Isabel saw more people, all staring and pointing and waving. "Yes! Yes, we made it! We made it!" Isabel said, shaking Ivan's arms. Ivan hopped up and down so much the boat groaned. "Florida!" he cried. A black man in a white suit hurried down the beach toward them, waving his arms over his head to get their attention. He yelled something in English and pointed for them to go farther south. Amara followed the shore around the bend, and then the open ocean gave way to a quiet little bay with a long wooden pier. The pier had a little cafe on it with tables and chairs. Fancy two-man sailboats were parked on the beach next to the volleyball courts, and more umbrellas and chairs dotted the island. Isabel's heart leaped. The U.S. was even more a paradise than she ever imagined. Luis flipped a switch, and the putter of the engine died. The white people got up from their tables at the bar to help pull them to the dock, and Isabel and the others reached for their hands. Their fingertips were almost close enough to touch when black men in white short-sleeve uniforms pushed their way between the vacationers on the pier and the boat. One of them said something in a language Isabel didn't understand. "I think he's asking us if we're from Haiti," Lido said to the other boats. "We're from Cuba," he said slowly in Spanish to the uniformed man. "You're from Cuba?" the officer asked in Spanish. "Yes, yes," they cried. "Where are we?" Poppy asked. "The Bahamas," the man said. "The Bahamas?" Isabel's mind went back to the map of the Caribbean on the wall of her schoolroom. The Bahamas were islands to the north and east of Havana, directly above the middle of Cuba, a long way east of Miami. Had the storm really taken them that far off course? "I'm sorry," the officer said, "but you're not allowed to land. Bahamian law forbids the entrance of illegal aliens to the Bahamas. If you set foot on Bahamian soil, you will be taken into custody and returned to your country of origin." Behind the officers, one of the tourists who knew Spanish was translating for the others. Some of them looked upset and started arguing with the authorities. "But we have a sick pregnant woman," Lido said to the officer. He moved so the men on the dock could see. Isabel's mother and tourists behind the officers cried out concern. The officers conferred, and Isabel held her breath. "The commandment says that for the health reasons of the pregnant woman may come ashore and receive medical attention, the Spanish-speaking officer said. Isabel and Ivan clutched at each other with hope. But she cannot have her baby here, the officer said. As soon as she is well, she will be deported to Cuba. Isabel and Ivan sagged, and everyone else on the little boat was silent. Isabel felt sick. She wanted her mother to get better, but she didn't want them to be sent back to Cuba. Couldn't the Bahamas just let them stay? How was one more Cuban family going to hurt? She looked back at the pier and nice cafe. They had plenty of room. The situation was explained to the tourists on the pier, and they gasped and waited. All right, Lito said. My daughter is sick. She needs medical attention. No, Poppy said. You heard him. If we step off this boat, they'll send us back to Cuba. I'm not going back. Then I will go with her, Lito said. I care for Teresa's life more than I care for El Norte. Tears ran down Isabel's cheeks. No. This wasn't the way things were supposed to happen. Her family was supposed to be together. That's why she'd insisted they all go on the boat. And if her mother went back to Cuba and her father went to the United States, which one was she supposed to go with? Lito started to lift Isabella's mother, but Mammy pushed him away. No, Isabel's mother said. But Teresa, Lito said. No, I don't want my baby born in Cuba. But you're ill. You can't take another ocean voyage, Lito agreed. I will not go back, Mammy said. She reached up and took her husband and her daughter's hands. I will stay with my family. Relieved, Isabel threw herself into her mother's arms. She was surprised when she felt her father kneel down to the boat and hug them both. It sounds like we're leaving then, Luis told everyone in the boat. Before they could get the engine started, one of the tourists tossed down a bottle of water to Senora Castillo. Soon the rest of the tourists were hurrying back and forth to the cafe, buying bottles of water and bags of chips and tossing them into everyone's hands on the boat. Aspirin. Does anyone have aspirin for my mother? Isabel begged. Up on the dock, an old white woman understood. She quickly dug around her big purse and tossed a plastic bottle full of pills to Isabel. Thank you, Isabel cried. Her heart ached with gratitude towards these people. Just a moment of kindness from each of them might mean the difference between death and survival for her mother and everyone else on the little raft. By the time they finally restarted the engine and Amara swung them around to leave, they had more food and water than they had brought with them to begin with. But they were farther away from Florida and freedom than they had ever been before. Mahmoud, somewhere on the Mediterranean Sea, 2015, 11 days from home. This is page 179. My baby, Mahmoud's mother wailed. My Hannah is gone. The Mediterranean was still attacking them, wave after wave, trying to drown them, and Mahmoud could tell that his mother didn't want to fight anymore. It was all Mahmoud could do to keep her head above the water. I'm still here, Mahmoud told her. I need you. I gave my baby to a stranger, Mahmoud's mother howled. I don't even know who she was. She's safe now, Mahmoud told her. Hannah is out of the water. She's going to live. But Mahmoud's mother would not be consoled. She laid back in the water, her face to the sky, and sobbed. The dinghy coming by had re-energized Mahmoud, but he could feel the buzz quickly drain away, replaced by a cold exhaustion that left his arms and legs numb. The sea rolled over him, and he went under again, coming up sputtering. He could not keep himself and his mother afloat. Not for long. They were going to die here. But at least Hannah was safe. Yes, he had been the one to convince a stranger to take his little sister away. And yes, his mother might never forgive herself for letting Hannah go. But at least neither of them would have to live long with their regret. The rain began again. The awful, pelting, deadening rain. And it felt like Mahmoud and Allah was crying for them, with them. They were drowning in tears. Under the sweeping rash of rain, Mahmoud heard something like a drumbeat. Water on something that was not water. He searched the rising and falling waves until he saw it. The back side of a life jacket still strapped to a man who floated face down in the water. In his mind's eye, Mahmoud immediately filled the drowned man's face with that of his father, and his heart thumped against his own useless life jacket. He flailed in the water, half swimming, half towing his mother toward the body. But no, the life vest was blue. His father's had been orange, like Mahmoud's, and this one was real, a real working life jacket. Mahmoud let his mother go for a moment and wrestled the body over. It was the big man who had sat next to him on the dinghy. His eyes and mouth were open, but there was no life in either one. The man was dead. It wasn't the first dead body Mahmoud had seen. Not after 4 years of civil war, with his hometown right in the center of the fighting. A man had been killed right next to him in his family car. He realized with a start, how long ago had that been? Days? Weeks? It seemed like a lifetime ago. But no matter how many times he saw death, it never stopped being horrifying. Mahmoud shuddered and recoiled. But if the man was dead, that meant he didn't need his life jacket. Mahmoud fought down his fear and fumbled with the straps on the dead man's life jacket. Mahmoud's fingers moved, but he couldn't feel them. His hands were like blocks of ice. He only knew he was touching the strap because he could see it happening. Finally, he got one strap unbuckled, and another, and the body began to shift in the vest. Mahmoud realized he was condemning this man to the bottom of the sea. He would never be bathed and wrapped in a kafan, never be mourned by those who loved him, never have his friends and family say prayers over him, never be buried facing Mecca. Mahmoud was putting a man in his grave, and he had duty to him. Mahmoud had heard funeral prayers too many times in his short life, most recently for his cousin Saeed, who had died when a barrel bomb exploded. Mahmoud quietly recited one now. O God, forgive this man and have mercy on him and give him strength and pardon him. Be generous to him and cause his entrance to be wide and wash him with water and snow and hail. Cleanse him of his transgressions as white cloth is cleansed of stains. Give him an abode better than his home, and his family better than his family, and a wife better than his wife. Take him into paradise and protect him from the punishment of the grave and from the punishment of hellfire. When he was finished, Mahmoud clicked open the last of the strap, and the man's body rolled out of the vest and down the murky depths of the Mediterranean Sea. Here, Mom, put this on, Mahmoud said. It took some time to get her into the life jacket, Mahmoud doing most of the work. But at last it was on her, and Mahmoud no longer had the fight to keep her afloat. She lay on her back, eyes closed, muttering about Hannah, and Mahmoud clung to her life jacket. He still had to kick his legs to not pull them both under, but not nearly as much. He didn't know where they would go or how they would get out of the water. Perhaps in the light of the day, they would see land and be able to swim for it. In the meantime, he had to survive the night. Whew.